Okay, let's get started. Right, so let's take you through what we're going to do today. For all the new people that have just joined, we're going to be closing tenancies, refunding some deposits with some deductions in different setups. We're going to be using the self-managing landlord setup, so we're going to be using direct rent. I will be explaining some of the differences when we are doing, when you're closing out with property managers, and where some deposits are obviously held with the landlord sometimes when you're a property manager, and it can be quite confusing when you want to close down a tenancy like that. So I'll be going through that as well. So the first thing I'm going to go through is closing tenancies on the manual payoff charge system. So you're not integrated with Xero, QuickBooks, or Afterlife Bank Feed. I'm going to be doing an insured tenancy. So an insured tenancy is where the landlord would be keeping the deposit and returning it to the tenant. I'm going to be going through a DPS. Okay, yep. I'll be going through DPS. So when the landlord is obviously using DPS to, you can't see my screen share. Oh, okay. Can people see my screen share other than this lady here? Yes, I can. I think it might be a browser issue, Kate. Yeah, okay. Right, so yeah, so we'll be going through DPS as well. So this is where obviously a third party is holding the money, and a lot of clients kind of just confused on how to record this in Arthur, and obviously encounter some problems. So I'll be going through that now. So let's exit out of this and begin. So this would be the bank feed one. Let's slide this across. So this is my account here. Just let me know if you can see this screen now as we've just switched screens. And I'm just going to wait on a little confirmation on that. Okay, that's great. Right, let's go to properties. So I've set up a little property here just to demonstrate and make things simple. Closing tenancies, manual payoff. Got one unit holding both of the tenancies. So also this session is recorded, so you don't have to record it on your own platforms. This is fine. It will be all recorded and posted. So let's start off with the insured scheme. So the insured scheme, I'm just going to reiterate, and this is a landlord, so they will be holding that deposit. When you have this sort of tenancy, before you close anything, make sure that the deposit is registered. If you're holding that deposit, always make sure that is done. So this tenancy started on the 1st of September. So if I go to register deposit, make sure that this is the 1st of September, and that's when the deposit came in. The deposit scheme is insured, so it's not going to be DPS, it's going to be my deposits. It's going to be held by the landlord, as this is a self-managing landlord, and the deposit required is £1,000. We'd tick this box. Oh, we've got a question here. Do not deal with self-managed properties. We are letting agents. Is this training relevant to us? This training is relevant to property managers as well. It's a very, very similar way. It's basically exactly the same when you close tenancies as a property manager. It's just slightly easier to do self-managing landlord because I don't have to involve management fees, but it's literally exactly the same process. So this is very, very relevant to property managers and all setups as the functionality is the same. So that's fine. So we tick this deposit has been registered box when the deposit has been paid to you or the DPS. That's when that is ticked. Let's save that now. Okay. So to close a tenancy, the main thing is this balance has to be nothing can't be outstanding, and if it is, it will be liable to the deposit. So as you see, I've manually paid off all these rents here. Right, this is loading. In a second. Let's refresh this. Okay, so we go to deposit. So this is the deposit charge. So when you start the tenancy and you make the tenancy, you'd make a registered deposit charge for the required amount. And if you're on the manual charge reconciliation feature, you just simply pay off this charge here, and this would create this receipt, and that would make a positive. And this is all good to be closed now. So the ending is the 30th of December. So I've made all the tenancies 30th of December to make it easier to close, and it will say expiring when it's closer to the end date. So once everything is balanced and you've got your deposit, we go to close tenancy. And I'm just going to show you, obviously, I will take you through, if you're property managers, one thing I'll do before I start this is I'll say, just for property managers out there, if you've got a tenant, property managers, and your landlord is holding the deposit, that money obviously won't go through you or your bank accounts, as it will be direct between the tenant and the landlord. In these cases, and this is only for that case, property managers that use Arthur, with the tenants holding the deposit with the landlord, wouldn't have any deposits here, and they wouldn't register it on the tenancy, as the monies don't go through your bank account. And the way you'd close a tenancy if you don't hold that deposit is just by updating the status to passed, and that would close the tenancy. That's just something I wanted to reiterate. For property managers that don't hold the deposit, you would not be registering the deposit, as you do not hold it, and you would set the status to passed. So now I'm just going to close this tenancy for self-managing landlords. Tenancy end date is the 30th. What you always have to do when you're closing tenancies, always remember to allocate to tenants here this deposit, and this will pull up this screen. If you have multiple tenants, you can allocate it to each or individually. If, for example, you've had a problem where you can't see this here, or it says 0, and you know you've registered a deposit, this number will only appear if you've registered the deposit not only on the statement, but within registered deposit here. So this has to be filled out with the deposit amount for that tenancy, for that amount to be right here. And that is a must. So make sure that is there. So we allocate to deposit, put 1,000 in, because that's how much we're allocating to the tenant. Press confirm. So now we get to this screen. As this is on the insured screen, what we're going to be doing is sending this out of the rental account. So wherever that tenant gave you the money, whichever bank account, that's the same bank account it's going to be leaving. So for example, this tenant gave me the deposit through the Jack Smithers bank account, and on the remittance date of the 15th, so when we'll be sending it out, and that bank account has to match the spent item that you have physically spent to refund the tenant, in essence. This changes when it's DPS, but for insured, so the remittance bank account is exactly the same as the one that you refunded the tenant with. And that is just as simple as that. For manual payoff charge, if we can add deductions as well. So if you did a cleaning charge, obviously this is going to be different for the other setups, and I'll take you through that soon. But if there was a cleaning charge and you want to charge the tenant for it on a manual payoff and record that, you can simply do that here under a sundry charge and type in cleaning for £50 and add that in, and then that will be deducted from the deposit. Now, obviously, this is much simpler than the other ones, but this will be how you do it for manual payoff charge setup. So if we proceed, let me cancel that, proceed. So on the confirm closing, there is a box here to tick. So stop recurring rent charges from being generated. So you'd always want to tick this as they'd keep recurring. Sorry, is this training relevant if we use custodial scheme and are linked to 0? Yes, it's very relevant. So for the new people that have come here, so we will be covering 0, insured and DPS, Arthur Live Bank Feed, insured and DPS. This is just going through the first setup So from the easiest setup to a little complicated, the little complicated setups. So we'll be covering everything from head to toe. And if you've got any questions, you can ask me at the end. And obviously you can tick this a change unit status to available. And if we confirm, this will now make a right. Okay, that's fine. So if we go to properties now, closing tenancies, manual payoff, and we go to self-management landlord, tenancies, go to insured scheme. So now, as we've closed it, the status will be set to passed. That means it's been closed. We're going to have a tenant remittance here for £950. That essentially says it's a tenant refund, in essence, of £950. We've got a cleaning charge of £50, and that's all been remitted. And this is essentially a clean, closed tenancy. So that is how we would do insured scheme, manual payoff, closing tenancy, just like that. So I don't want to dwell on this for too long, and we'll go straight to the next one. We'll go to properties. So just as easy for the DPS. The only thing we'll be changing for DPS is where the bank account is going to. So this is the reason why, I'm just going to duplicate this tab. This is the reason why we ask for you guys to make a DPS dummy account, DPS control account here, as this is where you will be selecting the bank account if it's held by the DPS. So this bank account will basically just record the in and out of, it will basically just be, it will mirror what the DPS would be doing. And that's how you'd record the custodial scheme. So if we go to DPS custodial statement, so if we go to more, registered deposit, and select the date as the 1st of September. And here, so this is the main thing. So we would click Deposit Protection Service DPS for deposit scheme. It's held by the DPS for £1,000 and it's been registered and gone through. That's perfectly fine. We save that. We check on the deposits. That's fine. That's been paid off and good to go. So now what I'm going to do is close this tenancy. And we are going to allocate, as always, 1,000. First step, always do that. Do you have to register deposits for deposit registered in a previous system? Susan, could you clarify that for me? Register deposits for deposit registered in a previous system. So I think what you're referring to is registered deposit already held. So that sort of thing will be only for Zero, and I'll explain exactly why. For this purpose, so here, I just paid this off simply as this is a manual payoff charge account. So just to show that the deposit has been paid, we just manually pay this off here. And this is only for manual payoff accounts. So for I know that you use Zero, and I'll be taking you through how that works there because it's slightly different. Okay, so for DPS, you always have to click DPS control account for the remittance bank account. That is a must, as that will basically say, so if we go to tenancies, I'll just explain why we have to choose that. Will any of this webinar be relevant for QuickBooks too? Unfortunately, Louise, we don't integrate with QuickBooks anymore, and thus the webinar won't cover QuickBooks. So I haven't been tasked to go over QuickBooks, but you can email me about that in after this, and I'll gladly take you through closing tenancies with QuickBooks privately, as it's just not available to clients, so I can't explain it. What was I doing here? Right, so sorry. So yes, so DPS custodial scheme. So the remittance bank account has to be DPS control account, because when we make the registered deposit charge for DPS, this bank account will be DPS control account. And what this will do is it'll increase that bank account by £1,000. And when we close the tenancy for the DPS control account, it will reduce that bank account £1,000. So it will essentially balance out that DPS control account, and it will show that this tenancy has been closed off for the exact amounts. And I will be showing how we obviously deal with deductions and received amounts if you do cleaning charges with the DPS with the live bank feed. And that will be more in depth. If we want to add deductions, as it's manual payoff, you can add deductions as you wish, and that will just be recorded on the tenancy, as there's no physical bank account that this is going through apart from the DPS control account. So simply, we just double check the remittance date, DPS control account, and proceed. Exactly the same as before, just the remittance bank account is DPS. And that is that for manual payoff charge. So very, very simple for manual payoff. Does anyone have any questions at all about manual payoff charges or this setup, as they are both now closed? And that's basically the easiest way to close tenancies in Arthur. So as you can see, tenant remittance of 1,000 has been refunded. If no one's got any questions about this, we're going to go to the live bank feed in just a second. So I'll just wait for a quick minute just to see if anyone's typing away. Any questions? Yeah, Fiona, please let me know the question. How does the bank feed integrate with Xero? So George, we're going to go through Xero at the end, and this is just for manual payoff charges. So what I mean by manual payoff charge is that you'd have a charge and it would just literally say payoff charge here. So this account isn't integrated with Xero or the bank feed. I'm going to go through those in just a second. Just asking for any questions currently. Right. Okay. So in about 30 seconds, I'm going to go to the bank feed and we will carry on with the session. Okay. So if we have transactions prior to using Arthur fully and Xero, and can I use manual payoff for old deposits? No. So if everyone can see that, if we have transactions prior to using Arthur fully and Xero, can I use manual payoff for old deposits? If you're using Xero and you have old deposits, I will show you how to set up those deposits up when we get to Xero. You wouldn't use manual payoff for Xero or Arthur Live Bank Feed integrations. You'd only use manual payoff charge if you are only on the manual payoff charge setup. So that is that. Okay, cool. Right, let's go to the bank feed now and let's move on. So on the bank feed, this is going to be a bit interesting. I'm going to do a couple deductions here and show you how that works with both insured and DPS. So just as before, we'll do insured scheme first. And I'll duplicate this tab and get the bank account open as well. So if we go to bank accounts, so we have a tenant remittance of £850 that I've refunded from this tenancy. So I'm going to show you why that is so. I've got £150 for DPS received for cleaning. So for example, if you charge the tenant £150 for cleaning from their deposit and the DPS was holding that, and the DPS would give you the £150 back as per the charge instated to the tenant, you would get this in your bank account, and I will show you exactly how to deal with this to adjust for the deposit here physically. And obviously, this is £150 cleaning fee for a contractor, and I will show you how to do that as well. So this is insured scheme for the live bank feed. This is the deposit section here. Let's just check everything's registered. So insured scheme, it will be my deposits, landlord, when it was done. That's all good, ticked up, great. So I know that there's been cleaning work done as per the tenancy end. So what I'm going to do, I want to recharge the tenant for cleaning that has happened once the tenancy's closed. And also there was a contractor that was doing that. So I want to invoice the contractor and I want to deduct the tenant's deposit because of a cleaning that has happened as per this situation. So if we go to disbursement charge recharge, create an additional transaction for contractor, and we say Bobble Fix It is the contractor here. Transaction description will be cleaning or end of tenancy cleaning. The date will be basically right at the end of the closing tenancy. Contractor charge, so this is how much you paid for that contractor to do his or her services. So you can say that's £75. So we paid Bobble Fix It £75 to clean that tenancy, and we're going to recharge the tenant for £100 for that cleaning, and that will be deducted from the deposit, and that's how we set that up. So that will invoice the contractor £75. Or actually, right, so we'll make it 150 so we can match it actually. So let's say we paid 150 to the contractor and we recharged the tenant 200, and that make that 150. Yeah, because that will match up with the tenant remittance. Yeah, so say there was 150 cleaning and you recharged it to the tenant for 150 for that cleaning. Obviously you can recharge it more or less. I've just got the remittances set up so I can reconcile them in the end. So now we save this transaction, and that will be £150 for end of tenancy cleaning. We close the tenancy now. We always allocate the deposit as per usual. Confirm. Now, so this is obviously Insured Scheme, so it will be the client account that we are returning this deposit for. The £150 for the end of tenancy clean is instantly here for us for it to be deducted, and only £850 will be sent to the tenant. So basically just a simple, just proceed, confirm, and then that will be done. So we go to statements. That will be a tenant remittance of 850. The 150 has been deducted from the deposit to make that 850. If we go to contractor statements, we've got Bobble Fix It of 150. He's still yet to be paid. So that is something we want to do. So if we go to BNY client account, refresh this, what we will see is the £850 tenant remittance. We instantly just match this, and that will be that refund accounted for physically. We match that off, and this is the cleaning for the end of tenancy cleaning that we spent £150 from our client account for that cleaning, and that is where we can reconcile that. So does anyone have any questions about what I have just done for the insured scheme for the live bank feed? I'll wait 30 seconds for a little query if anyone does have one, and then I'll go straight to custodial, and then we'll cover Zero as our last example, and then I'll take questions, proper questions at the end, and emails if you guys have any other more questions. So I don't see anything in the chat, so everyone seems to be happy. Okay, let's go to DPS now. So this account, unfortunately, doesn't have a DPS bank account. I couldn't set one up, unfortunately, but I'll explain exactly what you would do with if there was a DPS dummy account here. I'll explain exactly what you do there for that. So now we're going to close out the DPS custodial scheme for the bank feed. And we are going to process a deduction here and show you how that is all gone through. So obviously this will be DPS. This will be registered under the DPS here. So this bank would be DPS control account. It would be the dummy account. Oh, if you could slow down, it's difficult to follow your mouse on the screen to see which menu items you select. I understand. So this will be recorded, so you can rewatch this. I'm just going quicker for the people that are obviously on Zero. because that's a bit more in depth, but I can slow down just a little bit for you. So this charge will be registered to the DPS bank account here. When you set up a DPS dummy account, this will be the place where you edit it and make it DPS. And then we go to register deposit charge. So the deposit scheme will be deposit protection service, DPS. Deposit held by will be DPS, and the amount will be £1,000. And that is fine. So now we also have cleaning for this particular person of £150. And what we're going to do is we're going to close this tenancy as it's all balanced. We're going to allocate that £1,000 just as usual. Confirm. Now the remittance bank account, this will be DPS control account. So just please use your imagination. And if you've set up a DPS bank account, DPS will be here to select, and that is what you select for DPS when you're closing tenancies under the DPS. This will be DPS, but for this example, I'm just going to use the client account as it's not set up on this account. So for deductions, so if you have done cleaning or a service in the tenancy as it closes, and you want to obviously account for this with the DPS, and so the DPS will send you some money for the services from the deposit, and that is what is here. So we can say, for example, we can add a deduction simply here if it's DPS, and say it is a service charge. We can say there was a broken window for £150, and that is obviously refunded to you from the bank account. So this would normally be so this is correct. Where this would money come from. So the DPS would send this £150 to your client account, and the way we would account for that is by using an internal transfer, and I will just get to that in a second here. So so this would be DPS bank account, and when we close this tenancy, £850 will go into the DPS bank account, and that will decrease that nominal account. So if I just show you what I mean, if I proceed here and close this now, cancel, close, confirm. So I'm just going to show you what I mean by that. So if we let this close out. So back to tenancy. So on the DPS, when you make a dummy account, a dummy DPS account, and you create a charge, when you first start the tenancy, you make a charge of £1,000, and that will increase the bank account here. I go here. So just imagine there was a DPS bank account here, and you made a charge for £1,000 towards that DPS bank account. That'll increase that DPS by £1,000. When you close out a tenancy to the DPS bank account that you made for £1,000, it will deduct the DPS balance by the amount that you've chosen. Now, if you've got cleaning, see, for example, we only deducted £850 from that £1,000 that was already in the DPS. So the DPS bank account would be £150 out. And the way we would account for that is finding the DPS where they gave you money for that difference. So that would be £150 that is not in the DPS bank account. So and the DPS would send this money into your client account, and all you do with the bank feed is click internal transfer, and then this would obviously be the DPS bank account here, and you'd click the DPS bank account and just say DPS received for broken window, and essentially this would go straight to the DPS and account for that broken window that we registered on the tenancy here. And then that would go to the DPS and balance the DPS. So it'd be £1,000 in and £1,000 out, and you know exactly where that came from. And that's where that would go. You just match it off and it'd go into the DPS and balance. So that is how we deal with DPS closing tenancies for the Arthur Live bank feed. And yes, yeah. So now this is passed, this is closed, and that is done. Is there any questions on the DPS custodial scheme for the Arthur Live bank feed closing tenancies that anyone wants to ask me before we head into Zero? And Zero will be in just a second. Yeah. So I'm just going to wait a couple minutes for this one, because obviously DPS on the bank feed is a little bit trickier. And I'm just going to let anyone that has a question to quickly ask that. And then we'll run to Zero. I'll go through Zero a little bit slower, as there's obviously two windows to go through. I'll be dealing with a deduction on Zero as well, just to show you how that works as well. So I can see no questions are coming through. Can someone put in the chat if they understand what I'm saying? I don't want to confuse everyone here. Just if you understand, just type yes if you can. What I'm saying, if you want me to go slower, or if we're going at a good pace. Okay, everyone's saying yes. Okay. Okay. Right. So I'm just going to move to Zero in just a second. What if there is a debt left on the account? As you said, balance should be 0, 0. So if there's a debt left on the account, what we would do is we would do a bad debt write-off. Give me 1 second. So any other questions? Okay. Okay, that's a good question. That's a good question. Let's do that quickly. So bad debt, what we would do is, so for example, if you had a direct rent charge, let's say overdue pro rata that they never paid off, let's say it's like £400, that goes into there. What we would do is we would just do a negative amount and then make that balance. And what you would do is account for that as bad debt in a suspense account. So for example, we've got £400 the tenant hasn't paid off, and this is past the closing date, and obviously we couldn't close this. So if it's more than the actual deposit that they're holding and you want to action a bad debt write-off, all you do, pardon me, all you do is go to add transaction, direct rent, bad debt write-off, and when it was there, and we'll do a minus £400. So this just credit it, and the main function of what I'm doing here is just to allow me to close the tenancy. If it's more than the deposit, then you'd action a bad debt write-off, unless you're going to court for it. I know a couple of clients that have had this where they've got an extensive amount of bad debt, and they're going to court for it. It's best to leave the tenancy open until the court has gone through with that sort of thing, and then you can record it correctly and then close it properly. But if you do in the end not receive the money and you want to write it off, you just do a negative amount for the transaction type and allocate it to the charge for £400, and then it would allow you to close the tenancy, and you just assign this to an expense in essence, and this will allow you to close the tenancy. Does that make sense, Jackie? Just let me know, and then I'll move to Zero once that is confirmed. Okay, Perfect. Right. Okay, let's go to 0. So this is the last one here, and then I'll take questions and emails. So if you email me about this, I will reply very quickly as it's part of the webinar. So if we go to properties and we go to closing tenancies in 0, units, self-managing landlord, tenancies. Also, any property managers out there, if you are stuck with what I've said today and are a bit clued up about how you do it with property managers, it's exactly the same process, but sometimes, obviously, as you're a middleman between the tenant and landlord, and there is a few more scenarios that obviously are not shown in this webinar. And if you want me to go over that privately or over email, I'll do that. No problem. So let's start off again with Insured Scheme. Just as usual, it's basically exactly the same as the bank feed. It's just on a different website, and there's syncs involved. That's the only difference. So we just registered deposit as usual. As it's insured, it's my deposits, landlords. You put the money in here. You tick this box if it's been paid. That's all good. That's fine. We close the tenancy off. So as usual, just £1,000 straight to the tenant here. Now, I'm not going to process any deductions on this particular example. I'm just going to do a full tenant remittance, and I'll process some deductions with the DPS once we go to that last example here. So, so let's go through this a bit slower. So the remittance bank account is your client account for Insured Scheme. So in this case, it's Aston Chase for me. So if we go to our 0 dashboards, we've got an Aston Chase client account. This is where I've been receiving rents from this client, and this is where I've received his deposit as well. So this is where he's going to get his deposit from, and that's why I'm choosing this bank account. So this is Aston Chase. That's fine. This is the remittance date. There's no deductions. There's full refund, and we just simply proceed. And I'm going to stop recurring charges from being generated once this is done. And that is as simple as that. Back to tenancy statement. So tenant remittance. So this would be the £1,000 that's gone through. Now, as this is slightly different to the others, we have to run a sync for this £1,000 to come over to the reconciliation page to be reconciled against the spent item of you giving out that £1,000. So if we go into Aston Chase client, just so reconcile, and we head over to where we spent £1,000. So the tenant remittance, we spent, we refunded the £1,000 to them, and for this to come up, we have to run a sync. And I'm not going to run a sync just yet. I'm going to go through closing the DPS just after. Does anyone have any questions on how I've done what I've just done? And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to synchronize with 0. And I'm going to do it on all and synchronize there. I'm going to duplicate this tab and go to the DPS. So while that's syncing in the background, can you go over that again? Sure. So, okay, so I'll let this sync in the background. So what I just did there, George, for the Insured Scheme, so for the Insured Scheme, this wasn't obviously done. What I did is I made sure the registered deposit was £1,000. It was held by the landlord because it's insured. It's my deposits, not DPS. Make sure this box is ticked. Then I closed the tenancy, just exactly how I closed the tenancy for all the other scenarios I just did, exactly the same way. So if I go to here, it's getting a bit slow now, right? So what I did is I allocated this £1,000 to the tenant. That came up over here. and I'm choosing the Aston Chase remittance bank account because that is the exact bank account that I have spent the money from to refund that client. And then I just close the tenancy. And now I'm waiting on a sync. So that is all that you've missed. Let me know if you got that. Yeah, so let this run. Okay. Okay. So while that sync is running, I'm going to go through the DPS and explain a bit about how all that's set up. George, did you get that? Just confirm for me if you got that, and then I'll go. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Okay, so right, so DPS 0. I'm going to take you through everything you need to know for this because this is the most used closing tenancy method. I'm just going to find out quickly how our sync is doing, as I just want to finish off that insured before I come over to, yeah, so this is still running. Okay, so we're just going to let this run in the background. And once that's finished, essentially, once that sync is finished, we can just reconcile this against the tenant remittance, and that will come through as per usual. So if we are at the DPS custodial scheme, the way we make a DPS on 0, the main thing is, so first you'd need a dummy account in Arthur, a dummy bank account. I'm going to take you through the whole process from A to Z. So the first thing, if you're setting up a DPS tenancy, you need to go into bank accounts. You need to make sure that you have a DPS control account, this or this. Just make sure you have one of these. You go to financials. You make sure that you have a nominal account in 0 for your DPSs. So if I go to chart of accounts from accounting, go to chart of accounts, we go to we go to the search and we go to DPS, and here, so I have a DPS made here already for this account. I'm just going to quickly show you how you would get this. So you just add account. Account type would be a current liability. It would be DPS C. The name would be DPS custodial. You would show it on the dashboard watch list, and you'd enable payments to this account. That's exactly how you'd make the liability account in 0 for DPSs to go into. Once that is made, you're going to have something like this. And once this is made, what you have to do is make sure that that Arthur bank account that we talked about, that dummy bank account, is mapped to that liability account. So this DPS control account from Arthur is mapped to this DPS control liability account in 0. That's how they'll communicate when you run a sync. If these aren't mapped, the DPSs won't flow through to 0 and you won't see them come through, basically. So make sure that the DPS dummy account in Arthur is mapped to the DPS control liability account that I just showed you how to make in 0. So once that is done, let's go to the sync history. Okay, so this is now finished. So now if we go to dashboard, we should see a lovely remittance that we can reconcile right here. There you go. Payment insured scheme transaction remittance. So this would be that tenant remittance that we just closed off. And once we ran that sync on the tenancy level, that came straight over to the bank account that I selected to be reconciled against the spent refunds that I gave to the tenant for his tenancy. So now we just press OK, and that's sorted. So that is finished. Insured scheme, it's reconciled, you've paid it out, and now Arthur's recorded that as a closed successful tenancy. So that is now finished. So back to the DPS. So when you make a DPS, so when you register the DPS deposit on a tenancy that is with the custodial scheme, what you first do is make a registered deposit charge, and you call it deposit already held. This is for historic deposits. And that would be for the amount. And then you would need to make a custom analysis code called registered deposit already held for the DPS. And what this will do is it will make an opposite charge credit, which will balance off this charge. And these will both come over to that chart of accounts, to that DPS we talked about that we just made. I'm going to go over that again, just so, because this is getting a bit complicated now. So when you make a tenancy, first thing you do is make the registered deposit charge. Deposit is already held for the charge of £1,000 or whichever the deposit is. And then you would head over to, so we need to make this transaction type, as this isn't in the system, but it would just basically show that the deposit has been accepted by the DPS, and you want to show that the DPS is holding that deposit. And this is when we would make this deposit already held transaction. So we're going to go to financials. We're going to go to analysis code. So this is all recorded. So if you don't pick something up, you can rewatch it at the exact time, and that will be fine. So the way we make that registered deposit already held transaction is simply populate the name. It's going to be a charge, and it's going to be a credit, because we're crediting this charge, because it's not going to be a debit, because we know that the DPS is holding it and we're not liable to reconcile it in our bank account because the DPS is holding it. So this is why we need to make this custom charge, so that we basically say that it's going to the DPS. So it'll be for the tenants, tenant deposit statement, and that's it. And you would save analysis code, and you would use this when you set up DPSs for a tenancy. Does everyone understand what I've just said at that point before I carry on? Or do you want me to go through it once more? So this is a manual transaction you've set up. Yes, exactly that, Fiona. I've set up this transaction type, and this is only specifically for DPS for 0 users. This always has to happen for a DPS held tenancy. And I will show you exactly why, just as I get confirmation from some others that they understand what I've just said. And then I will move on further. So if someone can just say that they understood what I just said, then I will proceed, or I will go back and do that once more. Okay, no, I don't. Too quick. Chris Thornton. Okay, okay. I will just run through it once more. So sorry for the people that understand. I'll just be 1 second. So what I did, Chris, is I made a DPS nominal account in 0 and a DPS dummy account in Arthur, and I mapped them so they can communicate together. So then when you make deposits in that tenancy, it can go over to that liability account, and it can, so once you make a deposit charge and this analysis code, that deposit will come over to this liability account and increase it to basically show that the DPS is holding that money. Does the linkage between A and X not already exist? Arthur and 0 not already exist? No. So so that wouldn't exist, because the first thing you need to do to link those bank accounts, you have to go to mapping bank accounts and make sure that the DPS dummy account that you made in your Arthur bank account is mapped to the DPS control liability account that you made in 0. Without this green mapping here, every DPS that you make in Arthur won't go to 0 unless this is mapped. Do you understand that part? Give me a thumbs up, Chris, and then I'll go further. So they always have to be mapped. So this has to be mapped to this without looking at mapping. I don't know. Okay. Well, the way you would make this is you'd go to financials, you'd make the bank account, the DPS dummy bank account, and you would make the liability nominal account just like this on zero, and then you'd run a sync, and then you'd map them together, and then that's how they'd communicate. If you chuck me an email after this or after the session, I'll go over just this part for you, but I will carry on just to get this over for the other people here. So where was I? So if we go to tenancies, DPS custodial scheme. So once you've made that analysis code, people, you will just make a deposit already held here for the £1,000, and that will come up as a negative. And all you do is you allocate this to the charge. You'd allocate this to the charge, and that would balance it off here. So it won't go over to zero in your client account to be reconciled against something, because this is held by the DPS. So there's nothing to reconcile if it's held by the DPS, because monies aren't going through you, they're going through the DPS. So once this is done and you run a synchronization, what you're going to find in this DPS control account, like I just explained the connection, if you click in here, and if I can just find that tab that we were talking about. If I click in here, there we are. And we go to the 1st of September when this charge was made. We go to reverse the dates here. 1st of September, DPS custodial scheme deposit for £1,000 debit. Now, this means, sorry about that. This means that this nominal account has increased by £1,000 because we've basically told Zero that the DPS is holding £1,000. Now, the tenancy is closing, so what we're going to do is credit this nominal account by £1,000 and show that this DPS has been returned. And this is the whole function of this bank, this liability account. It just basically accounts for what the DPS is doing. That's all this is. And once that's done, that will sync over into here, and that's why that's there now. So can I just get a quick okay? Can I just get a quick okay, or I understand what I've just said right there, and then I'll proceed to closing the tenancy. Okay, sundry 150, it's fine. It's fine. Okay, okay, we've got all goods. Okay, that's great. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the Aston Chase client account, and I'm going to show you guys. So when the DPS, so I made a little received amount here. DPS received cleaning. So so there was some cleaning done for that DPS tenancy, and the DPS sent us £100 back from the deposit, and only gave £900 back to the tenant because there was cleaning issued, and you issued the DPS to give you back £100. Now, the way we do this, the way we deal with this is after we close the tenancy, I will just show you how we deal with that in a moment. So if we go to statement, this is all balanced. We go to register deposit. So it will be DPS, deposits held by not the landlord, but DPS. Sorry about that. That's all good. Tick to confirm that the DPS holds it. We save. That's fine and done. Okay, now we close the tenancy off. And what we're going to do is select DPS control. That's the main thing we do. We put 1,000 in here just as usual. And that's fine. So 1,000 going straight to the DPS control. Now I'm going to explain exactly what this means. When you select DPS control in the remittance bank account here, Arthur will recognize that you're sending it to, I'm going to show you what exactly happens, so no one's clued up about what's happened. If we go to bank accounts, bank accounts. So, okay. So when we select remittance bank account DPS control and we close this tenancy, what this tells Arthur is that it's going to debit this DPS control dummy account by £1,000. And when you run a sync, it will credit this DPS control account by £1,000. So that's how they communicate. So as soon as you click DPS control here and proceed and you run a sync, this will go from that bank account to this liability account in Xero, and it will credit it off, and that will show as paid. Now, that's why we select this. We've got a cleaning charge for, so let's find, so let's say this is a sundry charge. Where is sundry charge? There you are. And this is, so for cleaning, we put £100 here, and we add. So this would be a cleaning £100. So that means £900. So this is what I mean. So this is the important part. So £900 will be going straight to the DPS control liability account. Now I'm going to say that again. £900 will be going straight to the nominal DPS liability account, and it will come up right. It will come up, stay with me. It will come up in the nominal account here to see. I will show you. So we go to DPS. So it will come up right here as £900 in. Now you're wondering, obviously there's £900 in, but there's £1,000 in initially, so that doesn't balance. And you're going to have £100 out. Now I'll show you exactly how to deal with that. So if we cancel and we proceed with closing this tenancy, so £1,000 of deposit held has been allocated to the tenant here, DPS control, because we're doing DPS, we proceed. And we stop recurring charges from being generated. Make sure to tick that box. Let this do its magic. Back to tenancy. Now, what this does is, so now what it has done is £900 is being held in this bank account in Arthur, and it won't go to this control bank account in Xero until we run a sync. So that is the next step of what I'm going to do. But before I do that, I'm going to account for that cleaning charge that was obviously received by the DPS. And we can see here that we've issued the tenant £100 for it, and we've received £100 from that DPS. So what we do is we use the create function. So if you ever have any deductions with the DPS Xero, you use the create function, because the DPS will send you money for XYZ of the reasons why you asked for the deposit to be deducted. I use the create function, you select, choose the account. So we're going to credit the DPS £100 or X amount. And this basically says to credit the DPS for that deposit that came through. So if I go to the name of the contact, and this will be custodial, DPS custodial scheme, the tenancy here, a description. So this was a cleaning fee that was returned. The unit is the self-managing landlord webinar that I'm doing it from. The property is the closing tenancies webinar. And that is exactly what you do to account for the received amount for that £100. And all we do is click OK. And that £100 is now accounted for in your nominal account in your DPS. Now, what I'm going to do before I check that account is run a sync on this one. And this will be our last scenario. So while we let that run and we wait for that to come over to this beautiful account, that will be how we do DPS closing tenancies for Xero users. So now essentially we're at the end of the session, everyone. So if there's any questions or anything you'd want me to go through again, because now I've covered everything, so I'm not holding anyone up. So if there's anything you guys, specific things that you want me to go through, I don't mind running through that now. So if you've jotted any questions down throughout this session and you want to ask me now is a good time. Other than that, for the people that have understood the session and is an okay with what I've explained, this will be recorded and sent to you. Which email do we use? Sure. So here, this is my email. So lucas.bulchinskas@arthuronline.co.uk. You can send me an email about what I've gone through and any bespoke things you want to go through. Can you go into Arthur/financial/deposits? What should we see? Okay, I'll do that in a second. Where will the link be? The last training session never reached me. So this training session should be uploaded onto YouTube in a few days, a few coming days to all clients. I think it's batched emails to everyone. I will personally email you the previous webinar and get you sorted on that front. But that's my email there. If you've got any other bespoke questions about closing tenancies, I will sort you out over there. So that's fine. Thank you, Fee. Thank you very much. So right, hopefully everyone has understood what has happened. If you haven't, please email me or book in a tutorial with me and I will show you personally. Right, okay, can I try and summarize the last process? Okay, Fiona, we'll do that in just a second. Thank you, no worries. Right, can I try and summarize that last process? Register deposit initially, create a transaction, send it deep to DPS, when closing session, allocate tenants, add deductions, manual create. Okay, we'll go through, so you want to go through Zero again. Okay, I'll do that just after this is synced so I make sure that you guys know the end result. I don't want to leave you guys without, obviously, you know, in case it doesn't come over, what do you do in that case? I'll make sure we cover that last part. No worries. Thank you, Jackie, for being in the session. Hopefully you've understood. Thank you. Sorry, not to run through it again, just asking if the summary is correct. Oh, okay. Right, so register deposit initially, create transaction. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So between a couple of the steps you've just mentioned, Fiona, you're gonna have to run a sync when you so run a sync. Can you type your email here as it's impossible to copy and paste on the screen above? Sure. Here you go. Let me know if you get this from me, and then I will just let me know if you've got that email there, so you can just copy paste it as you wish. That's fine. Okay. So if we do this. So, but yeah, so in general, the initial difference between the bank feed and Zero is very, very similar. Just as I internally transferred that cleaning charge to the DPS, it's basically the exact same in Zero. You just use the create function and just push it towards the nominal account that it belongs to, and you're basically good to go. There's just a couple syncs involved with Zero, obviously. Yeah, I think I missed someone's question actually somewhere. Right, if I go into that, so that's now synced. So what we should see, can I just ask what the difference is between an outstanding balance and an overdue balance? So an outstanding balance would be a balance which is obviously unpaid and which is not overdue, and an overdue balance is a balance which is past its due date and outstanding. So outstanding just means all the charges that are not past its due date yet but are outstanding, and the overdue is past its due date. That's the difference between that. Right, what was the last thing I was going to do? Right, chart of accounts. I think someone said a message somewhere. Sorry if I've missed your message. Was it Colin? Can you go into Arthur financial deposits? What should we see? What should we see? Should the charges plus received balance out when tenant has paid deposit and DPS registered? Yeah. So when the DPS is holding the monies, the nominal account will be increased, and I just want to see if this has come through now. Right, so the £100 that I've just transferred from that reconciliation screen has come through, and the £900 that has come through from where are you? So £900 here, DPS. This has come through from Arthur, and the £100 here that's come through from the reconciliation page. That those two together, added together, equals that, which means it's balanced and it's good to go. So now that would finish everything. That would be it. And that's how you account for DPS custodial scheme with 0. So now the session is finished. That is exactly what would happen. And now we are good to leave. But now I'll answer a bunch of questions. How does the tenant receive their £900 back if this has been allocated to DPS act again? So it depends on how you deal with DPS. Again, this is why I mentioned there are different ways DPS obviously gives money out. So normally the DPS would return the money straight to the tenant, and that would mean that's why we do it this way. If the money is returned to you and you give the money back to the tenant, then I will show you how you do that. So it will be slightly different because obviously, so can I just confirm, Fiona, so does the DPS for you then, do they give the tenants, do they give the money, the deposit to you, and then you give the deposit back to the tenant? Or is that just a misunderstanding on my part? Sorry, I'm not sure as I work on behalf of someone else. Okay, well, I can explain conventionally. So the DPS would hold the deposit and that would go straight to the tenant once the tenancy is over. That's how the DPS would function. I think some clients have told me that the DPS sends the money back to the property manager, and then they give it back to the tenant, but I'm not aware of that instance. But if that is the case, all you would do is have a spent item on your client account. So instead of the DPS bank account, you just choose the client account so you can reconcile it here. But email me about that, because I don't think that's what your setup is. But we'll confirm over email and make sure you're sorted and good to go. Colin. Okay, I'll find out for sure what they do. Yeah, email me and let me know. Colin, what should we see? Should the charges plus received balance out when the tenant has paid deposit DPS registered? So Colin, could you just confirm what is that for 0 or for the bank feed? So which setup would that be for? And then I'll go through that for you. 0 and custodial. Okay. And what should, okay. So I'm just going to see, what should we see? The charges, deposit. Okay. So when the tenant has paid the deposit, what you do, so pardon me. So as I've just explained, we have a registered deposit already held transaction somewhere here. Here we go. So here, this would be mapped to DPS control. We use this charge when the tenant has paid the deposit. When you know that the DPS is holding the deposit, we use this charge to basically begin to push that £1,000 or that deposit to 0. And that's how that deposit will be pushed to 0. By using this charge, it's a charge credit, and that's all it is. And we go to the tenancy. So once we go to the tenancy here, we go to statement, we go to tenant deposit statement. So you always, whenever you make any tenancy, you always have to have a charge, a registered deposit charge, to show that there is a deposit there that you are accounting for. If I just go to the deposit here, so registered deposit charge, deposit is already held. So you make this charge, and then when they pay, you create an additional transaction called registered deposit already held. So you go here, you go to registered deposit already held. You type in the deposit, obviously when it came through, the tenant, and just the exact deposit amount, and then save. Once you save that, you can allocate it to this charge, and then you can run a sync. And then as soon as you run that sync, you're going to see £1,000 be debited into the liability account. I have registered deposit already held set up correctly. Sorry, can we just look at Arthur Financials? There is a summary report which I do not understand. Sure. So which summary report are you referring to here on this screen? Tenant deposit. Okay. Yeah. So tenant deposits. So with DPS, the way it will function is what you will see here is you will see this £1,000 that is accounted for and will be done basically, and this will be at a balance of 1,000 and show as unpaid until the DPS refunds that. When should it balance to zero? It should balance to zero when the already held transaction is allocated to it, and then when you refund it, it will show up here on the balance. Also, we have like a bespoke report for DPS deposits, which you can see which tenants have actually paid the deposit, which tenants have refunded the deposit for DPS, because basically because the DPS is a nominal account here, the way that communicates with the reports in Arthur is a bit different. I don't mind just telling you over email how you would go about reporting how the DPS is the status of it essentially, and I don't mind doing that over email. So if you send me an email about that, I can look into that for you. So do we have any other questions from anyone at all? And as we are heading towards a close, if there's anything that you guys need to ask me, my email, I have posted it in the chat. I'll post my email once more in the chat, so you guys can email me. There you go. And I'll be closing this off in just about 5 minutes. So yeah, hopefully everyone's enjoyed the session. And if we haven't got any other questions, I'll be finishing it in about 3 minutes. And that'll be it for today. Okay. No worries, Fiona. Sorry, cannot see the email in the chat. Okay, Colin, I will. Colin, can you send? Actually, I've got your email anyway, Colin. I will email you personally just after this webinar, and then you can reply to my email. Is that okay? Okay, yeah. So yeah, so I'll send you an email with the webinar as well for you, and you can just reply to me and just tell me anything you want, and I'll answer it. Just as so. So we've got 2 minutes. If no one's got any other questions about our session today, or prefer to email me, I'll leave my email up here. And yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Also, if you guys have some spare time, Trustpilot review would be very nice. I've got to say that at the end. If I've done a good job and you think I've done well, a review always helps everyone out. So that is something you guys can do. Other than that, I will be closing off this webinar. Hopefully it's been helpful for you. If you've got any other questions, please email me and I'll get to you accordingly. And yeah, thank you for joining, everyone. All right, goodbye.